Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's been quite a week. The sun continues to shine. Sadly, we're not going to win the World Cup. We may have to wait a long time for that. But it's been a week absolutely dominated by a cyclone of a different kind. It's the Donald Trump cyclone, and it came into this country, and I'm not sure British politics has ever seen anything really quite like it. Particularly the article in the Sun newspaper, talking about how Brexit had been completely wrecked by May, that a trade deal with America could no longer happen. And then, at Chequers, the President saying what a wonderful Prime Minister Theresa May was, a strong leader, and she herself today talking about what a great negotiator she is. So we're going to talk a bit about that today. And we've got a very unique an interesting guest coming in today. We have got Steve Bannon, Trump's former chief strategist, and he's coming in to the studio, and I'm going to interview him, and then the lines will be thrown open, and you can come on and you can talk to Steve Bannon. You can put him on the spot by calling 0345 6060 973. If you disagree with him, you can text to 84850. You can also watch us live on Facebook and comment there too. So this is a unique opportunity because, you know, most shows on a Sunday morning, whether they're radio shows or television shows, you know, it's journalists talking to politicians or it's journalists talking to journalists. Here is the only place that you get the chance to ask somebody who's been in a position of immense power directly your questions and to challenge him on his career and maybe to ask him where he thinks Trump goes next and where Europe goes next too. So that is going to be really, really exciting. My own take on the Trump visit is I suspect that the article in the Sun newspaper is nearer to the truth than the Chequers garden where he was singing her praises. You see, there's no doubt to me that this American president, in fact, every senior office holder there in Washington, D.C., they believe in Brexit. Why? Because they believe in the nation state. Why? Because they see the European Union as the epicenter of the whole globalist project. But I also suspect there's a bit of anger now. Before it was bewilderment. I remember meeting a couple of Trump's cabinet members who expressed this, how's it taking so long, Nigel? What's going on? I mean, surely it should all be dealt with by now. But when they saw that through the Chequers plan, where we're going to be stuck with regulatory alignment, or they've now rephrased that, of course. They called it a common rule book. No doubt they've focus grouped it and found that's a bit less damaging than regulatory alignment. But because of that, it genuinely does make a future trade deal with the USA very, very difficult to consider indeed. So I suspect in that Sun article there was just a little bit of a feeling of somehow being let down by a British Prime Minister who has repeatedly said there will be a trade deal with the USA once we've left the European Union. Well, to analyse that and to see what the impact of the Trump visit is on this government and to talk about, and by the way, if you hate politics, the rest of this week is going to be a living nightmare for you. If you thought last week was busy, next week could be even busier. I'm going to welcome Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. Good morning, Theo.
A very good morning, Nigel.
So what do you think Trump's comments have done to Theresa May in terms of her standing?
It has been an extraordinary week. Donald Trump flew in from the NATO summit and then did this interview in the Sun newspaper where he said what people had voted, well, they hadn't voted for what Theresa May had put forward, the Chequers plan. Yep. This at the time that the government was trying to announce its own white paper, which he talked about in the common rule book. He also said that it would kill any trade deal with the United States. Now, the detail here is that the United States wants a trade deal with the UK, but without all the rules and regulations that we sign up to with the European Union. Now, under the plan announced by the Prime Minister, we're going to have to abide by that common rule book in order to have frictionless trade at the border and to remain in a facilitated customs arrangement, a customs union, Brexiteers would say by any other name. And that's the anger that Donald Trump, that you were referring to, the frustration that there isn't going to be that ability to break away from EU rules and therefore sign a bilateral trade trade deal with the United States. He also talked up Boris Johnson, saying that he would be a great Prime Minister.
And he also said that Boris was a great friend of his. Boris has been really kind to me. I remember Boris saying during the campaign in the States that he wouldn't visit New York in case he bumped into Donald Trump, and then he subsequently said he didn't want Trump to come to London, and now they're best mates.
Well, of course, because Boris resigned at the very beginning of this week. It seems like a lifetime ago. And in his resignation letter, said that there was a betrayal of Brexit. That when he looked at the Chequers plan and he read through the Chequers plan, the words to the song he couldn't sing because they got stuck in his throat. So Boris is exactly what Donald Trump likes, and of course there was that Chequers press conference in the garden, and Donald Trump tried to row back, but he didn't stop talking about Boris during that press conference, and he said there was a line in the Sun article that didn't receive the prominence that he felt it deserved, where he talked about Theresa May being a fantastic Prime Minister, but it all came a little bit too late.
In truth, in terms of policy, he hardly backtracks at all.
No.
Because he said the British people voted for independence, and it's up to you to interpret what that means, and you do what you want, Theresa, but as long as it means we can have a trade deal. So, in effect, in policy terms, he hadn't backed off. Perhaps he felt a little bit embarrassed by the way the Sun had portrayed him.
But absolutely, but this is at a time where the Prime Minister is desperately trying to convince the voting public that she hasn't gone back on what she said she would deliver and taking Britain out of the single market, out of the customs union, and out from under the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. But actually, when you look at the detail, if Britain wants to break away from the regulatory alignment, or as the previous phrase has referred to it, then in actual fact, it is going to have a vote in Parliament, and there will be measures from the European Union admitted to by the British government in that white paper.
And Boris Johnson, you've mentioned him already. Very interestingly, I saw that he's rejoined the Daily Telegraph's team. There'll be an article by him in the newspaper tomorrow morning, and a resignation speech in Parliament.
It is going to be blockbuster. It is going to be a real moment. Will he go down the Geoffrey Howe route? Will this be the moment that Tory Brexiteers say, right, we have a leader in waiting. This is the man to take forward our cause. We now need to make sure that Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, has all of the letters he needs. That's 48.
Yes.
In order to trigger that vote of no confidence and then precipitate a leadership election. And the whip's working furiously this weekend to try and stop that happening. This at a time when the polls are saying that Theresa May is down, or the Tories are down 6%. Many of those voters going over to UKIP.
Yeah.
Jeremy Corbyn, Labour, just remaining stumm, letting the blame for this firmly rest with the Prime Minister, and letting them take the heat on this, because they know that if they can pin if the perceived failure of Brexit is pinned to the Tories, then there's every chance that Tory backbenchers very nervous about what's going to be happening back in their constituencies, very nervous about what their grassroots are saying, will just say, actually, enough's enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? UKIP was dead. I mean, UKIP didn't exist.
It's coming back, needs a leader.
Well, we'll have to see about that. I did say that if Brexit was a total mess, I would seriously consider coming back to it, and whether that's helped the ratings or not, I don't know. But it's very interesting. And the rest of the polling, I can't believe it. Just 7% of voters in the Sun on Sunday newspaper agree with the Chequers agreement. That's 1 in 14 voters.
Absolutely, and that's the problem for Theresa May, is that she is trying to sell something, and we've been called into Downing Street and spoken to aides of the Prime Minister who are saying, listen, this is the best we can do. And Theresa May's writing in the Mail on Sunday today saying the MPs, Tory MPs, they need to be pragmatic, because if they're not pragmatic, if they don't vote for this deal, then there's going to be no
But she's
Brexit
really
at all.
saying it's my way or the highway. You know, I've got this deal, and she says, you know, how she got the front to do this. She repeats it in the article. It's what she says in every speech. I'm convinced somebody winds her up at the back in the morning. You know, we will leave the single market and customs union, get out of the common agriculture policy and the common fisheries policy. I mean, I've heard it 1,000 times. But what she says in public just does not correspond with what's in the documents.
No, this is the key sentence. This is the scale of the opportunity before us, and my message to the country this weekend is simple. We need to keep our eyes on the prize. If we don't, we risk ending up with no Brexit at all. This is a time to be practical and pragmatic, backing our plan to get Britain out.
So not a no-deal Brexit.
But this is a really interesting point, because of course Theresa May said only weeks ago that if the government said only weeks ago, if you don't vote for the plan, then we risk going out on WTO terms, going out with a no-deal Brexit. Now she's saying quite the opposite. She's saying that there won't be any Brexit at all. So which one is it?
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone knows. She perhaps knows her own mind. I don't know. I've said repeatedly over the course of the last few months here on LBC that I think she's the worst Prime Minister we've ever had in my lifetime. Her ratings are rock bottom. They're collapsing in the polls. Her party's in revolt. The real question is, can she hang on? Can she survive? And will Boris actually wield the knife? You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's now 10:15. President Trump, what he made of the visit, how he thinks Brexit's doing, and also what he thinks of Theresa May. After all, he's met her. She visited the White House not that long after Donald Trump had been elected, when he was still there as Trump's chief strategist. Boris, what's he going to do? Newspaper article tomorrow. He writes beautifully. No question about that. He will, I'm sure, tear the Chequers deal to pieces. But is he actually, in that article, and when he stands up and speaks in the House of Commons later on tomorrow, is he actually going to say, I'm the man to lead the country? I'm the person that will take us through to the Brexit that people voted for? I think it's pretty obvious to everybody that he wants to be the leader, he wants to be the Prime Minister, but does he have the courage to use the knife? I really don't know whether he will or not. I kind of suspect that he won't. I suspect he won't want to be seen to be the baddie. He'll hope that it'll just happen organically. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, when the Telegraph goes online at 10 or 11 o'clock tonight. And I also feel that despite the kind words in Chequers, I think most people know that what was in the Sun was probably nearer to the truth of what Donald Trump thinks about the Brexit process, thinks about the prospects of a future UK-US trade deal. That's my feeling on it. Let's take a couple of callers and get their takes on it. Mark is calling from Palmer's Green. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Nigel. Actually, this was a question for Mr. Bannon, but I'll ask you.
Yeah, go on.
As we've seen so far, President Trump seems to be a man of his word, and he's honouring, at least trying to honour, his best to honour his campaign pledges. Do you think that Mr. Trump has now lost some respect for Mrs. May due to her lack of backbone when dealing with those bully boys over there in Brussels, and her, in my opinion, absolute disgraceful betrayal of the people, like myself, who voted for independence in 2016 and trusted Mrs. May and the Tory government to deliver it? Although, I must admit, a little while ago,
the point is, Mark,
said to me, never trust a Tory. And
I did say that.
I think you're right.
I did say that, yeah, and I tried, Mark. I mean, you know, when she gave that speech at Lancaster House, and she stood there, and she said, you know, we're going to get out of the common fisheries policy and take back our waters, and we're leaving the single market, no argument, we're leaving the customs union. And even I said that night here on LBC, well, I never thought I'd hear a British Conservative Prime Minister using the same words, phrases, even sentences that I've been using for the last 20 years. But I did say that history wasn't so good on this, and she has let us down absolutely appallingly. Look, I think Trump has lost respect for her. I mean, if you look at the front page of today's Sunday Telegraph, you'll see an interview with Steve Bannon, who's going to be here in 10 minutes. And Steve makes the point that Trump advised Mrs. May to go in really hard. Go in really hard. Ask for a lot more. You know, be brutal, I think the phrase was. Ask for more than you know you can get, but at least start the negotiation off showing strength. And in fact, we've done the complete opposite. We've gone into these negotiations, and Monsieur Barnier keeps demanding concessions from us, and we keep making them. So, yeah, I do think he's lost respect for Mrs. May, and I think the rest of the administration, because, I mean, they saw a free trade deal with the UK as being really important. They wanted to show the world that they weren't outright protectionist. They were happy with free trade, provided that it was fair. Do you think, Mark, that Trump's comments have damaged May yet further?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I was hoping that it would have put this minging Remainers Brexit to bed, but unfortunately it seems like she's sticking to it. But one more thing, just quickly before I go, before you let me go. One word that scared the living bejesus out of me that President Trump said at the Chequers is he said once the Brexit process is concluded and perhaps the UK has left the EU.
He did, didn't he? Yeah.
That scared me.
Well, I think that probably shows you how much confidence he's got in Theresa May to actually deliver this, whilst at the same time saying what a wonderful woman she is and how strong she is and all the rest of it. But no, I picked that up, Mark, too. Thanks for your call, Mark. Let's go to Freddie in Chelmsford. Good morning, Freddie.
Yes, good morning, Nigel. I'd like to say that I'm absolutely ashamed of the people that demonstrated against the president, because I visited America last year for the first time, and I was given such I was met with such friendliness and politeness, and they're such wonderful people. And I think the millions of Americans that have been watching these demonstrations, I shudder to think what they were thinking when they looked at that. It's their president. And, you know, what is Jeremy Corbyn doing marching the streets?
He was there, wasn't he?
Yeah,
he was there with the protesters. Mind you, Freddie, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn's been in every protest there's been since about 1965, hasn't he?
Yes, but he's in the House of Commons. He's someone that can make legislation. He's not someone that should be out on the streets. But the point I want to make is that millions of Americans have seen these shameful scenes. How do you think they're going to react when they say, let's buy a British product? Here, hang on a minute. Look what the British people think of our president. And it could have an adverse effect on trade.
It could. I mean, I want to say this, Freddie, to you. Firstly, the blimp. You know, this Donald Trump as a baby, you know, flying in Parliament Square, permission granted by Sadiq Khan and the GLA. I cannot imagine that any other Western world capital on a day when the US president visits would have allowed that to happen. And on the demonstration itself, well, look, people, of course, in a democracy have a right to protest. But where were they when we had the leader from China, the leader from Saudi Arabia, all sorts of other dictators, you know, from countries with appalling human rights abuses? Where were these people? Nowhere to be seen. And what was really interesting is there was no real common theme. You know, you saw banners for the Communist Party, you saw European Union flags, you saw stop torture, worry about climate change, all sorts of different people coming together, angry people coming together. And I was really interested, looking at the pictures, you know, these people that talk about the diversity of a multicultural, multiracial society didn't look very reflective of modern Britain in that sense. In fact, from what I could make out, most people there seem to be called Jocasta or Sebastian and come from very nice houses somewhere in southwest London. Mummy and daddy very comfortably off. So, Freddie, it's just sort of an outpouring of anger, but it didn't have much focus.
No, and also, couldn't Theresa May have just taken time, just a couple of minutes to say, look, I disassociate myself from this Trump baby balloon. It's a shameful thing. It shouldn't be flown there. It's disrespectful. Couldn't she have just found a minute to have said that in public?
No, she couldn't, could she? And she goes along with every politically correct issue. She's condemned the president repeatedly. And very interesting moment, Freddie, at Chequers, when one of the journalists asked a question, the immigration question. You know, had immigration, you know, had an impact on society, perhaps a negative impact on society? And Trump said, yeah, you know, it has, particularly in Europe. And Theresa May would not answer that. I mean, she will not say that open-door immigration, Mrs. Merkel's error, you know, is leading to a sea change in politics in Sweden, in Germany, in Italy. All she did was say immigration is a very good thing. Well, controlled. We're all very happy with immigration. It is a good thing. So she's a very, very politically correct Prime Minister, isn't she?
Yes, she is. And I'm so ashamed of seeing these scenes. I feel quite depressed about the whole thing, actually, because wherever he went, he was shown he was disrespected everywhere, and it was just appalling.
Freddie, thanks for your comments. Freddie thinks it was absolute disgrace and bad for British exports. Theo Usherwood still with me. So as we look ahead to this week, we've got Boris tomorrow. Tell us a bit more about what's happening on Tuesday in terms of votes.
We've got the trade bill. And Jacob Rees-Mogg and the Brexiteers have put down 4 amendments to that trade bill. And, of course, it also needs to receive its third reading, remaining stages, in order to bounce on to the House of Lords. And the threat is that they're not going to vote for third reading, so that bill will be unable to progress. And that's crucial for Theresa May, if she can't get that support. Now, critical to this is what is Labour going to do? Jeremy Corbyn, they've still got to make up their mind within the leadership what stance they're going to take. Now, if they decide, and they'll look for some sort of reason in order to do this, that they can't support that trade bill, and they successfully whip the moderates, the Labour moderate MPs, and that's a big if, because I'm talking about the likes of Pat McFadden, Chris Leslie, Chuka Umunna, then Theresa May has a problem in getting that legislation through, because she absolutely has to do that. And the feeling in the Whip's office, and this is a widespread feeling, is that actually they may not have the votes and they may have to pull that trade bill and bring it back after the summer recess, because they know, as things stand within the Conservative Parliamentary Party, they just can't get it through right now, and they're going to have to wait.
If Mrs May survives till the summer recess, there is going to be a September crisis of huge size, isn't there? Because we're supposed to agree with the European Union by the middle end of October what the deal is.
Absolutely, and I think there's also a feeling within the Conservative Party is that this is only Theresa May's opening hand that she put down in that Chequers plan in the White Paper, and that it's only going to get worse as negotiations take place over the summer. MPs are going to go for their summer recess. They're going to have 7 weeks holiday.
And they're going to meet the public, and the public hate the Chequers deal.
Yes, and then but the officials are going to go over to Brussels and vice versa, and they're going to actually negotiate on this particular deal. But that's crucial, because when they come back is the question that it looks very, very different from what Theresa May has now. But in a flip. The flip side to this is actually it could work for Theresa May, because she can go to Jean-Claude Juncker, she can go to Michel Barnier and say, listen, if you knock me down any further on this deal, if you beat me down any further on this deal, and I have only a fraction of what I've asked for in this white paper, I'm out. And there's literally going to be no deal, and you're going to have to then deal, and then you're going to have to do business possibly with a Boris Johnson or somebody from that ilk of the party, or potentially you're going to have to restart the negotiations if there's a general election with Jeremy Corbyn.
And trust is so low. You know, this polling figures this morning, the most stunning figure of the lot is only 6% of the population would be prepared to delay Brexit beyond next March to give this Prime Minister time to come up with a more acceptable plan. And that just shows you, I think, both sides of the argument have absolutely no confidence in Theresa May at all. She's heading for an absolutely crucial few days. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It is now 10:30. Well, with me in the studio is one Stephen K. Bannon. Welcome to LBC, Steve.
Thanks for having me, Nigel.
Not one bit. Well, this is fascinating, because as I was saying to people earlier, you know, on a Sunday, particularly in this country, we have wall-to-wall radio shows, TV programmes, and it's journalists interviewing politicians. But more often than not now, it's journalists interviewing journalists talking about journalists. And the one group of people who do not even get in the middle of this are people called the voting public. It's as if the London media bubble exists for its own purposes. But what we're going to do here this morning,
because those folks are going to church, aren't they?
Well, many of them are.
Aren't they going to church?
Fewer.
Aren't they doing what the citizens of this great country have done for centuries?
Well, I hope so, although the numbers are declining a little bit, but hey. But the interesting thing is this. What we're going to do this morning is I'm going to talk to Steve Bannon about himself, his relationship with Trump, how he sees Brexit Britain, and the populist revolution. Is it all over? Has it barely started? And we'll do that, and then from 11 o'clock, we're opening this up to the public. This is a unique opportunity for you to come on and ask Steve Bannon anything you like. You can challenge him, you can question him, and he's here. And he will, and I'll make sure he answers you. How about that? So, if you want to put Steve Bannon on the spot, from 11 o'clock, call 0345 6060 973. You can text your views to 84850. And, of course, you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. Right, Steve. Now, you are, in some ways, in this country, seen as a little bit of a man of mystery, a bit of a James Bond villain. You know, you're the guy stroking the white cat, planning the downfall of empires all over the world. In fact, you even called yourself once, I understand, Bannon the Barbarian. So is Steve Bannon a barbarian?
It depends on where you sit. I mean, if you're part of the established order, if you're part of the permanent political class in places like Washington, D.C. or Brussels, or if you're what I call the party of Davos, if you're one of these globalist elites, yeah, I'm probably one of your worst nightmares, because I'm essentially a working class kid who just happened to get into places like Georgetown and Harvard, and then, went to Goldman Sachs, served in the Navy, and have taken this populist revolution very seriously for the last 10 or 15 years. And so, yeah, I think if you're a globalist, I think if you're an elitist, I think if you're somebody that is looked down on the working men and women of the United States or in Great Britain or in Europe or in Asia, I am a barbarian, and I make no, I'm a street fighter. I make absolutely no qualms about taking the torch to the established order.
Okay. Now, you talk about your working class background, which is clearly something very, very important to you. But you have made, as I understand it, quite a lot of money.
Well, yeah, I had the great opportunity of, after serving in the Navy, my folks, my relatives, were kicked out of every decent country in Europe. We got kicked out of Ireland, then went to Liverpool, got kicked out of there, went to the United States. It's a blue-collar family, basically, firemen, cops, people from the phone company. And I was very fortunate after my naval service to get into schools like Georgetown and Harvard, and eventually went to Goldman Sachs, which was a tremendous opportunity. When I went to Goldman Sachs, it was a private partnership, and it was extremely middle class. I mean, the guys there was not inherited wealth. I learned a lot at Goldman Sachs, and it really about how to apply oneself and understand financial capital markets and mergers and acquisitions. And from there, I've been very fortunate. I've had a chance to do quite well successfully, particularly given the history of my family, which is a pretty working class family.
But when you've made a lot of money and you live an extraordinary lifestyle, are you able still to keep a connection with working class people?
I think it's Donald Trump. I don't think it has to do with your net worth. Some of the great populists and people that support the populist movement in the world have done well, but they kind of come from working class and middle class roots. Look at Aaron Banks here in the United Kingdom. Look at Donald Trump. People always say, how can a billionaire like Donald Trump relate to people? Well, nobody makes a connection with the working class and the middle class, I think, throughout the world, but certainly in the United States, as Donald Trump, and yet he comes, it's a pretty middle-class family from Queens, right? Although his father did very well.
Yes,
by the way, it's not inherited wealth, and they never got a break. You had to make your own breaks. And so, remember, the populist revolt, particularly right-wing populism in the United States, and I think you're starting to see it take place in Europe. Right-wing populism is about giving the little guy, the middle class and the working class, what I call a piece of the action.
The little people.
The little people. Here's what it's about. It's not about taking control of the state to have another state-run enterprise. Right-wing populism is about entrepreneurship. Right-wing populism is about giving the little guy a piece of the action, better jobs and better wages through better trade deals and entrepreneurial finance. Not this kind of state-controlled capitalism we have today with all these multinational corporations in bed with government.
But is right-wing populism, right-wing nationalism, is this racist? Because it was one of the comments you made that really has caused great upset, where you spoke at a National Front meeting, or they've rebranded since then, but a National Front meeting that took place in France, in Lille, I think, and you said, when they call you a racist, wear that badge with pride. What did that mean?
Okay, but this is, and by the way, I got BBC on this, I blew up the Channel 4 guys on this, they look at the predicate I laid out. What I laid out is I started talking about Donald Trump, because he called Donald Trump a racist. All his policies are racist. You saw it in half of those signs down in Trafalgar Square on Friday. Donald Trump's a racist. Black unemployment is at an all-time...
Interestingly, Steve, interestingly and surprisingly, Sadiq Khan this morning being interviewed has said Donald Trump is not a racist, which I thought was very interesting.
Very interesting. By the way, I concur with you. For these guys that tout diversity and to tout all these things about inclusion and multiculturalism, it was a pretty all-white audience I saw of the 200,000 people they had. And by the way, they have total rights to demonstrate like that. But people say he's a racist. Black unemployment in the United States today is at a all-time historical low. Hispanic unemployment is at an all-time historical low. This is because of Donald Trump's policies about immigration and policies about economic nationalism. Remember, economic nationalism doesn't take into account what your race is, your color, your ethnicity, your religion, your gender, your sexual preference. What it takes into account that you're a citizen, okay? In our case, the citizens of the United States. Trump's policies are anti-racist. And I said Martin Luther King, who was an economic nationalist, because he died, he was assassinated at a trash collectors strike in Memphis, Tennessee, fighting for better wages for trash collectors. I said Martin Luther King would be proud of the economic policies of Donald Trump, of what they've done for the black and Hispanic community. And I teed it up at the Front National, and I said, those are the facts. And when they can't get you on the facts, because they'll never talk about the facts, they'll just throw racism up, that you have them. They can't beat you. Then wear the racism as a badge of honor. When they go to identity politics, when they go to racism, you know you're winning.
Okay. And Donald Trump, you picked Trump pretty early. You backed him through the campaign. You part with Kellyanne Conway of the main campaign team, the two of you for that last months of that campaign. What, when you're with Trump and you've spent loads of time with him on the campaign trail and at the White House, what's his best quality?
Toughness. He's impervious. You could not take all the. Remember, in 2016, the field of 16 candidates from the Republican Party literally took 20 or 25 years and billions of dollars to develop that. The think tanks, the organizations. You had in every vertical. You had the single best guy, whether it's Ted Cruz or Rand Paul or Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio. It was an extraordinary field, the greatest field the Republican Party has ever put up. And Donald Trump went through that field like a Sith through grass. Okay?
Yep.
You could take all 16 of those great candidates combined, they could not beat Hillary Clinton. When you take on somebody like the junta that the Clintons run, the mafia the Clintons run, you have to know how to take a torch to the enemy. Donald Trump is an armor-piercing shell.
Okay.
This is one of the toughest individuals I've ever met. And by the way, he's a very nice guy. If you're around him, the one thing you notice is his humor. He's got a very, very sharp sense of humor, and he doesn't take himself that seriously sometimes when you're with him. But he'll never show that to the public. The one thing he will show, and he shows all the time, he's impervious to attack. You attack him, he's just going to come. He's going to come back. So if you're going to tangle with him, and that's why you look at this field of all these guys, they're talking about running in 2020, that we're going to see on the hustings in 2018. Yeah. They better get ready for Donald Trump. Okay, he comes at you. He comes hard.
And what's his worst qualities? Because a lot of people, there's a long list published in our newspapers every day, calling him narcissistic, calling him a bully. What's the come on? You know this guy. What's his worst quality?
I don't know if I've ever thought about the worst quality. The worst quality is his sense of fashion judgment regarding me. When he referred to me as Sloppy Steve, he didn't see that. He didn't actually understand the entire package. So I think his fashion sense. His fashion sense. You know, he's got a certain house style, right? The power suits, the power ties. You know, a little bit Nigel like you. You guys are from the land that time forgot. Right, kind of a throwback to the 80s and 90s.
That's very kind.
I'm trying to be more contemporary, a little more Silicon Valley. But no, I think his worst qualities is judgment of my fashion sense.
Well, it all finished up with a great big bust up, and Steve had been there as Trump's chief strategist left the White House. We're going to find out why that happened, but for now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it is 10:45. I'm here with Steve Bannon, painted out by many on the populist right to be a hero, and those on the left to be perhaps one of the worst people ever to have been born. And from 11 o'clock on 0345 6060 973, you can come on the phone and directly challenge Steve Bannon. Ask him any question you want. Those phone lines open from 11. But for now, so there you were, Steve. You were in the West Wing. You were the chief strategist for the president, and there was a fallout. In the end, was it a case of
it wasn't really a fallout. I stepped into the campaign in August 14th of 2016, left Breitbart, left everything, all my businesses, to take the campaign over 88 days ago or 86 days ago, 16 points down, double digits down every battleground state, 70 on the generic ballot. You got to be 90 on the generic ballot, which is Republicans to win. And we pulled it off. And I told Trump, the candidate, the night that I took it over, said, you have a 100% metaphysical certitude to win if you stick to the economic nationalist program, and she does her identity politics. So that's why I know that this race baiting doesn't work. In fact, I like it when the Democrats do it, because it shows you they have nothing to talk about as far as economics and jobs go for working class people. Now, I basically cut out 1 year of my life to do that. I always intended to leave on August 14th, which is basically the day I left. And I told General Kelly and John Dowd, the president's lawyer, about August 5th. And Reince was leaving also. But that was General Kelly.
You did have some conflicts with members of Trump's family, didn't you?
Yeah, because, you know, I'm not doing this for anything else but, you know, I've made enough money. I've got other things I can do in my life. I focused the last 10 years of my life, and I'll focus the next 10 or 20 years that I'm around, on building this populist, nationalist movement in the United States and also helping other people throughout the world that want to do it. So I'm a nationalist. And when people of the family or others that they bring in are globalists and want to force globalist policies that are against what President Trump ran on, because remember I had the whiteboards in my little war room in the West Wing of the White House, and just checking off what he promised, you know, build the wall, bring jobs back, you know, confront China on trade, you know, confront North Korea, just these things. If you're going to get off message, you know, I'm a fighter. I'm not there to go to White House dinners. I could care less. The White House, and by the way, I'm a student of history. I've been brought up in a family that studies history. I served my country for 8 years, 4 at sea on a destroyer. The White House didn't really... It had no special meaning for me. It was a job. It was an important job, but it's not like every day I walked in there and I was awestruck. Okay,
are your relations with Trump okay now?
Well, I think so. Look what President Trump's doing. I mean, if you go back, ever since the appropriations bill back in February, right now he's more on track to accomplish what we set out to accomplish than even when I was there. So right now, everything he's doing, and in fact, I appreciate the fact that even on his legal team, he has fired Ty Cobb and John Dowd, right, who I thought led him down this road into a terrible trap on the Mueller investigation. In addition, I think you're going to see tomorrow, Monday, when the House starts to impeach, when the Freedom Caucus starts to impeach Rosenstein, that the president will eventually do what I recommended on Rosenstein, which is if he does not comply with the subpoenas regarding Crossfire Hurricane, which is going to have a huge British component to it, okay, this investigation, he will eventually end up firing Rosenstein.
What's the biggest mistake Trump's made?
I think it's not a mistake. I think it takes everybody a while to see if your personal style molds with what your presidency wanted to be. Remember, we were so unexpected to win. We had made a kind of a pact with the establishment to get to victory because we needed everybody on board. We made a deal with the establishment immediately after to kind of staff the White House and to staff the administration. That was probably a Faustian pact because, in fact, we did take our eye off the ball in certain regards of Trump's nationalist program. Okay? So I think the mistake, and I think Trump had to find his own sea legs. Now he's found them. He is running the White House exactly like he ran the Trump organization in the fact of there's no real chief of staff. There are 5 or 6 direct
reports. There's a very high turnover of staff, isn't there?
But I think it's logical. And here's the reason, is that the staff we originally brought in was going to be a more traditionally structured White House with a chief of staff hierarchy. Trump is not like that. Trump is a true entrepreneur. In Trump Tower, when he ran the Trump organization and built one of the great business empires in the United States, basically by himself, he had no chief of staff, no hierarchy, 5 or 6 executives that reported directly to him. Yeah. It's exactly how the White House ran today. And the White House in the last 90 days, he's accomplished more in the last 90 days than he did in the first 15 months. And if you look at the run-up to 18, there's going to be he's going to knock down one objective after the other. So I couldn't be happier right now. And I think on the outside that this group that I'm doing, we have a huge war room that we're running every day for messaging. I think we're starting to have a big impact.
You're still in good relations with the White House?
Yeah, well, I talk to guys at the White House, men and women at the White House every day, but there are certain people at the White House that I'm not on good terms with, and the reason is that we don't agree on policy. No. I'm not around. I wasn't on the campaign. I wasn't brought in to make friends. He's down 16 points with 8 days to go, and they think they're going to blow him out, take the Supreme Court and everything. We have a basketball term. A guy like Bannon gets brought in for a hard foul. Right, I'm not there as some sunny disposition that we're all going to have a group hug and let's have fun.
I believe you. No, right? I believe you, Steve. I believe you.
When you and I are in the United States, you know how to drive things. No, Nigel, one time I'm over with Nigel and he's saying, "Hey, you got to let me have a proper lunch here." So I said, "No, we're going to drive it through for 15-hour days." No, and at the White House, the same thing. I'm not there to make friends. I'm not there. That. If you're not with the program, then you're gonna have an enemy with me because I'm all about the program.
Now, on the question of economic nationalism, and you talked about jobs, working class people. Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor, has got a thought on that.
You said, Steve, about driving up wages, Hispanic wages, and driving down unemployment as well. But Harley-Davidson, because of the steel, aluminum tariffs, they've taken their jobs abroad. How's that helping working class? Well,
look, it's number one, in redoing the economic order around reciprocal and fair trade deals. Remember, the United States is upside down everywhere. EU, the Persian Gulf, the littoral nations of the South China Sea, Northwest Pacific, everywhere we have huge defense commitments. We're also totally upside down on these trade deals. What President Trump is saying in reordering this, okay, that there are going to be some perturbations. Not going to be perfect. This system has been in place for 50 years. And by the way, it's a radical idea. The guys in Britain that thought it up 150 years ago, 200 years ago, said it was a radical idea. It's an idea that focuses on driving down wages of working class people. Okay? That's why Britain had mercantilism. Mercantilism. Hang on. So this entire program, okay, is going to have certain companies at certain times saying, hey, we want to go to other places and do it. On certain occasions, that'll be fine. What, at the end of the day, you're going to have to be charged for is like the United States is the safest place to put money. The United States capital markets, that network of safety, that network of stability is built upon the shoulders of the deplorables. It's the cops, it's the soldiers, it's the emergency workers, it's those people that go to work day in and day out, build our civic organizations, go to church, coach Little League, are there for the society. Those are the deplorables. Those people deserve a piece of the action. And you're going to see it's not going to be quite so easy.
So some people,
not going to be quite so easy.
But let me move on, Steve. Would Boris Johnson, in your opinion, be a better Prime Minister than Theresa May? I mean, you've met Theresa May, haven't you?
I have.
And? What do you think of Theresa May?
Look, like I said in my interview today, she seems perfectly nice enough. I just go back to the Marr interview she just gave this morning when she was talking about the guidance President Trump gave her. I mean, this is the most... First off, the Brexit was the biggest event in democracy in the history of the British people, okay, to vote to get your independence back. It was a huge thing and should have been taken very seriously of get on with it. She said that Trump told her, sue the EU. But she said it in such a way as like to not basically get what he was saying. What Trump is saying when he uses litigation, because Donald Trump is very litigious. Litigation, if you had read Art of the Deal, right? Litigation is a weapon. It's a tool. It's when you go in hard. And I think what Donald Trump told her is that a deal like this has got to be done hard, it's got to be done fast, it's got to be clean, and it can't take a lot of time. The most important thing he said in the Sun interview, I thought, was deals that take a long time have two aspects to them. Number one, they normally don't get done, and number two, if they do get done, they're normally bad and tough to fulfill because you've got so much back and forth. I think she missed the central point of Brexit, which was independence. And so I think, I'm not British. Okay. I can't make the decision, but I got to tell you, someone like Boris Johnson or someone that can come in with bold action, because what they're doing right now to me is pretty obvious. They're just playing for time. You saw it today in her comments that, whether we do leave or not. And I believe they're just going to kick the can down the road for the British people, and sometime in the fall, some sort of crisis will come along with the Goldman Sachs and the McKinsey and all these guys in the City of London, right? And they're going to say, let's waive Article 50 and just kind of see what happens in the next couple of years.
Did Boris Johnson and you work together? Do you know Boris very well?
Yeah, he came over immediately. Boris came over in the first, I think, week or two to meet with Jared and myself in Trump Tower. We spent a lot of time with him, got to know him over the last year. I've always been very impressed with Boris. Will Boris use the knife tomorrow? Will he stand up in the House of Commons, in your opinion, and try and get rid of this Prime Minister? It's a binary function. I mean, it's if he's to have a future and to be a leader, you got to go in there and say, hey, I'm offering an alternative. Whoever's with me is with me. If you go in and just give some sort of watered down thing, I think the British people want bold action. They said that when they voted for Brexit. They understood, the working people in the middle, in Middle England, they understand it's all kind of complexity, it's all kind of details to the deal. But what they wanted was very simple. They wanted out. They wanted their independence. Will Boris give them independence? We'll have to see. I got to tell you, if you look at his letter, if you look at him and his writings, you look at his book on Churchill. He's a student of Churchill. I mean, this is the inflection point. This is a defining moment.
It's going to be the biggest day of Boris's career tomorrow. I'm joined here by Donald Trump's former chief strategist, Steve Bannon. The phone lines are now open. Come on, ask him any question you want. Put him on the spot by calling 0345 60 60 973. If you disagree with him, text to 84850 and send us your comments. Clean ones, please. On Twitter, Farage and LBC at LBC. And listen, you can be as tough as you like. You really can. Keep the language clean. Let's look forward to a great contest. The Public against Steve Bannon, starting in just a few minutes. I'm joined by Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's former chief strategist, and he's just laid out his worldview on LBC. And he's quite proud to call himself Bannon the Barbarian. He says he's not in this to make friends. He's in this to change things. Now, he's a hero to many on the populist right and the devil to many of those on the left. But what never happens is people like Steve Bannon do not get asked questions by members of the public. Well, they do here on LBC. So let's crack straight on. You ready, Steve?
Sure.
They could be tough.
I got to tell you, I did years of radio, so I love folks that listen to radio. I love folks in the UK. Let's get on with it.
We're going to go to Callum in Leeds. Good morning, Callum.
Hi, Nigel. Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask. I was first going to ask Steve about the nature of the breakup between him and Trump, but seems like Sloppy Steve was just an expression for his fashion sense. So there's not much to that.
Well, maybe, Callum, but yeah, okay, moving on.
As long as you say it's not my thinking.
The main question was, seeing as Steve was mentioning about someone stepping into the fold, is he sort of aware of Jacob Rees-Mogg and what I view as sort of the Trump equivalent over in the UK? And also I'd like to say that the popularity of Trump is huge over here, more than the media will give, and QAnon is real. And I would like to just mention the word of Q, and I'm sure Steve can't say anything, but there is a phenomenon in the US that's going with QAnon, and the more that we can spread about that...
No, Callum, we got loads of people that want to come on. I'm going to keep this simple. Jacob Rees-Mogg was raised by Callum, and he's somebody, Steve, who... A lot of people who call in and text and tweet this show talk about Jacob Rees-Mogg. What do you make of Jacob Rees-Mogg?
I know Jacob. He's very impressive, particularly one of the best thinkers, I think, in the conservative movement on a global basis. You're very blessed to have a number of great thinkers. If you had told people in the United Kingdom, in Great Britain, that 2 years after they voted for Brexit, we would be here with this white paper. Yeah. And we'd be here today having this conversation, and that the Prime Minister would be going on the Marr show and giving kind of that watered down, half in, half out, and actually saying, implying in the today's Times, right, in the Telegraph, that, hey, this thing may not happen, and we're going to have to see what goes on with it.
Yeah, it's my way or the highway. Stick with me, or we may not have Brexit.
May not have Brexit, which is always a signal. That's what they're signaling, okay? So I think people are being shocked. There are a number of great thinkers. There are a number of great guys, obviously, in Commons. There are speakers. I think now, remember, on Trump's inaugural speech, we went through a list of things, and then his most powerful line, I don't think, was American carnage. We went through a whole list of things the elites had done to the United States, and then he came and said, now comes the hour of action. Right? That's what we started off, blowing off the football in those first couple of months of the administration, hitting EOs every day, etc. It just seems to me it's now time for action. Talk is over. It's time for action. So whether it's Jacob Rees-Mogg or whether it's Boris Johnson or David
Boris
Davis,
has the chance tomorrow. Has Boris got the courage to really go for it?
This is what's great about following this whole drama, of Trump and populism and nationalism. It's got so many great characters that come on the stage, right? So people are sometimes in a supporting role, and then their moment comes on the stage.
It's his moment.
One thing I can tell you, and this is about, let's go back to the campaign. I've studied military history all my life. I was in the military. I know, Nigel, I've learned so much from you, actually, about World War I and World War II. The one thing about the campaign, Billy Bush, in campaigns like in battles and wars, things come down to one or two decisions made under intense pressure with not all the facts, and you make those decisions. One way leads to victory, and the other way you'll look back and leads to defeat. The Billy Bush weekend was a perfect example. Tomorrow is that moment, right?
Okay,
you're going to have that moment.
I agree. It's a big moment. Let's move on. Let's go to Adam in Paddington. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Nigel, and good morning, Steve.
Hey.
Look, firstly, something I'd like to pick up with you on identity politics you mentioned earlier.
Sure.
And I 100% agree and so do most of my friends and family. They're sort of sick of it. And there's something the left keep doing is continuously reframing anybody that has an opinion as narcissist, misogynist, racist, and it's the lowest form of response from a very benign group of people. So that was just in terms of agreement. The question I really had was, does Trump understand that a majority of this country are not like those lunatics that were protesting against him in Trafalgar Square in the last couple of days?
Okay, Adam, that's fine. Steve, does Donald Trump understand this? Or do you think those protests would have had an effect on Trump? I mean, is one of the reasons why the Trump visit was delayed for so long that he feared these protests?
I don't think fear. Look, I think the protests are positive, right? I like people that are engaged. I happen to be engaged on the right, right? I would love for our guys, our men and women to be in the streets. I think identity politics is their weakness. So for Adam, you know, when they call you a nativist, a nationalist, a xenophobe, all of that, they don't want to debate on the facts. Once they start trying to smear you, and they do this to us all the time, then you've got them. Let me give you a short story. When I was brought in the campaign, when Monday when it was announced, the media went crazy. They said Trump is down by 16. He's headed down to 25. She's not even campaigning. He brought in the mad bomber from Breitbart to basically go after his enemies and tear them all down as he goes down for his final destruction. This is going to be, you know, Gachadamarang, right? Just horrible. And what we did is ran a very disciplined campaign. She came off the beach, you know, off the Hamptons about 5 days later, 6 days later, went to Reno and gave a speech. I go into our war room. There's like 50 TVs, the young team of Rapid Response. I go in there. The whole thing is Breitbart, Bannon, alt-right, racist, everything like that. I told the guys, men and women right there, the young men and women, I said, if this is what she's going to run on, if she's going to run on identity politics, I said she's running to be commander-in-chief of the greatest military power in the history of the world. She's the leader of the Democratic industrial West, and she's sitting there talking about Breitbart and Steve Bannon and the alt-right. We talk about economic nationalism, jobs. You will crush these people. So, Adam, when they're using identity politics, we're winning. I wanted to use more. Look at the signs that were in Trafalgar Square the other day. You bring 100,000, 200,000 people, and that's what you're going to talk about with those loony signs. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything. Here's the basic working people in the world, and particularly in England, the United States, and in Europe, understand that these people they stand for nothing. They have no program. Okay, and all they're going to lead you down is a path of economic destruction.
And finally, Adam's last point: does Trump understand that what was in Trafalgar Square did not represent the whole country?
I think Donald Trump understands that intuitively. There are people around him every day that are telling him this is not, you know, this is not where England is. Now, there are others that do panic when they see this and they want him to be more politically correct. And you see sometimes they're around the president and try to get his natural instincts. His default position is, like we used to say in the White House in the campaign, let Trump be Trump. So I think Trump intuitively knows it. There are a number of people telling it. I think it's one of the reasons
So Trump at checkers? Was that Trump being politically correct?
I think it was President Trump trying to, you know, the Sun interview was pretty startling. It was, between NATO, he went over to NATO, and he's trying to save NATO. No one's done more work to try to save that alliance and make sure that Europe is not a protectorate of the United States, but it's an ally of the United States. A big difference. Donald Trump has done so much work, put in so much cash, has so much invested in making NATO work. To do that, and then the Sun article, I thought, by the way, if you go back and read that Sun article, it cut to the chase. I mean, it's perfect Trump. It just kind of highlighted what the issues are.
Yeah.
I do think since he was going to checkers, he's going to see the Queen, you know, he had the press conference. You got to weigh and measure both of them. But I think if you see her performance this morning on the Marr Show and add it up of what he had to say, I think adults have to come to their own conclusions.
Yep. Okay. Right. Now, guys, keep those calls coming. Keep your questions coming. Steve Bannon is here to take them. And, in fact, we will. At midday, when I come off air, Majid Nawaz will be here, and we'll carry on with your reaction and analysis to what Steve Bannon has said this morning. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. It's now 11:14. Steve Bannon's taking your calls. Keep ringing 0345 6060 973. But first, a quick look ahead to what's coming up in America this year. Theo.
It's the midterms, Steve. You lose it, you lose control of the House of the Democrats. Surely it's over for Trump. He's not going to be able to get them through.
Okay, let's go back. In 16, you had Brexit in June. You had the November elections of Trump's victory in November. those things are inextricably linked. 2 years later, I call it the nullification project. No one election is going to mean that much, okay? They do not intend the establishment in Europe, the establishment in the United Kingdom, the establishment in the United States are not going to sit there and pat you on the head and say, hey, you won an election, here are the keys. Why don't you put your ideas and take the car and drive it? They're not going to do it. They're going to fight you every day. That's why you are where you are in Brexit. And Donald Trump, this nullification project, this November is not the midterms. This November is his first presidential reelect. If they win the House, and they thought they were going to have a blue wave, if they win the House, they're going to try to impeach Donald Trump, and they're going to grind the Trump program to a halt. That's why we're nationalizing this election. It's going to be just as intense as 16. Trump's going to be on the ballot everywhere. I happen to believe right now we're going to pick up 2 or 3 seats in the Senate, and I think we're going to keep the losses in the House to under 15. They're in shock because Trump is on the move.
What does Trump need to do? I mean, obviously it's different to a couple of years ago. What does he need to do, in your opinion?
Well, by the way, I think the Federal Reserve is going to say at the end of the second quarter, we almost have 4% growth. All Trump has to do is exactly what he's doing today. Try to get fair trade deals and reciprocal trade deals throughout the world to reset our commercial relationships. Continue to press on with peace initiatives with North Korea. Reach out to Russia. Start to make NATO stronger. Deal with Iran. All he has to do is do what he says. He's confronting right now this crisis we have on the southern border. Eventually, we're going to have to build a wall. But Trump just has to be Trump. Okay.
Rally after rally.
We can't run as Paul Ryan Republicans or Mitch McConnell Republicans. It's got to be an upper. It's very simple. On November 6th of this year, it's an up or down vote. And the whole package. You either want Trump or you don't want him. If you don't want him, vote for a Democrat because they're going to impeach him. Okay, we're going to grind this thing to a halt. If you want him, you got to vote. Even if you don't like the local congressman, even if you think the guy's a rhino, and I'm the biggest anti-establishment guy out there, you got to hold your nose. You got to vote for him, and not just that. You got to walk. You got to walk the district. You got to ring doorbells. This is all about ground game. This is the deplorables. I say the election here is going to be deplorables plus the Reagan Democrats, and I think Trump is going to have a stunning.
That's a really important election.
We are here right now where we were in August of 16, a total inflection point. One path is going to lead to a resounding victory, and the other is going to lead to the Democrats taking over.
And if Trump asked you back to help, would you go back?
I'm much better on the outside. I'll never go back in the White House. Right now, I have a foundation. We have the biggest war room. We have the biggest messaging. I'm putting surrogates out every day. We're going to start overseeing kind of ground game just on policy. On Trump, what we're trying to do is say, here is what Trump is accomplishing, because the mainstream media will never tell you. Here's what he's doing every day. Here's that's impacting your life. And out in the hinterlands of our country, people know that. So, by the way, I couldn't be more optimistic where Trump is right now, and to see the meltdown. You're seeing the beginning of the meltdown on the left because they understand. They didn't hold Clinton accountable, and they didn't hold the Democratic establishment accountable when they lost in 16. They thought they're going to have these investigations. It was going to blow Trump out in 18. They now see these judges. They understand that Donald Trump, by redoing the federal judiciary, not just the Supreme Court, the other 140 judges that Trump is going to put in, he is going to be in the progressive left's life 30 years from now. I want them to embrace that. The guys in Trafalgar Square yesterday just embrace that Donald Trump will be in your life 40 years from now.
Who's the heir? On that subject, who's the heir to Trump?
Who's what?
Who's the heir? Well, you can do.
I don't think. By the way, that's what people talk about. 2020. Don't worry about 2020. The only thing that matters is converge on November 6th of this year. This is a reelect. After that, it's all bets off. But I tell you what he's going to do. Every one of those Democrats, the 40 Democrats are going to run against him. They all need 2019 to get their sea legs. Just like Trump needed 2013 and 2014 and 15 to get ready, right? They need 19. Trump's going to call every one of them out, right? In all these districts. You saw the other day with Elizabeth Warren. If you want to see Trump's campaign, go to that campaign speech he did the other day when he called Elizabeth Warren out, who's probably the best thinker of that group that's going to run against him. He blew her up, eviscerated her from the stage. Kristen Gillibrand better get ready for it. Cory Booker, get ready for it. Joe Biden. He's going to say, we say, hey, we got Donald Trump. Show me what you got. Okay, you got Nancy Pelosi, bring her. You got Cory Booker, bring him. You got Kristen Gillibrand, bring her. You got Kamala Harris, bring her. We got Donald Trump in Trump's program.
It's going to be fascinating. Let's get back to the callers. Let's go to Joe in Enfield. Good morning, Joe.
Hi guys. Steve, in his interview with Piers Morgan, suggested that Trump should be attacking potential Democratic candidates now before the 2020 election. Does he think this is really a wise move when you consider that conflict creates attention, attention creates influence. Should Trump really be granting Democrats attention to promote their message?
Wow, that's great. So
that's a master communication. Great. By the way, Joe, fabulous point. I think when you weigh and measure it, you know, do you bring attention to these guys? The mainstream media is going to give them attention anyway. And if you allow them to get a free pass in 18 and get their sea legs in 19, you've given them an advantage. Draw them out now when they're not ready for it. They're not quite ready for prime time. Also, their program is not really working, and Trump's is. Like I said, economic growth in the United States is going to be north of 3%. He's trying to work deals all over the world to bring peace. He's challenged Iran. If you look across the board, and he's trying to solve the southern border crisis. If you look across the board of what the establishment left him, which was managed decline of the United States of America, Trump is not going to do that. He's a business guy. He's inserted himself into every problem. Okay, they say he's a disruptor, but what he's trying to do is bring change so that the guys that follow him on, the men and women that follow on as President of the United States, regardless of political party, do not have these problems to deal with. That means in 18, you got to bring their top candidates and blow them up. I got to tell you, Elizabeth Warren had nothing in the United States. You know, she's called Pocahontas or Pocahontas because there's controversy about her claiming being a Native American Indian to get Harvard. He called her out and said, hey, I will give you $1 million cash money if you take a DNA test. And by the way, this was liberal press that she had to do it too because of cultural appropriation. You take a DNA test, I'll give a charity of choice $1 million. She had no response. I mean, Trump is going to go in hard with these people. So I think you weigh and measure by giving them attention. Joe's a great idea.
It was a great question, Joe, but you've sure got your answer. Let's move on to Malcolm, who's calling from Bannon in South London. Hi, Malcolm.
Morning, both. Steve, thanks for taking questions. You sound very strategic and very focused. I wondered if you put yourself in the position of a UK frustrated Brexit voter, what would be your advice? Have you talked about action and so on? What do you think those people can do?
Malcolm, are you one of those? I mean, are you somebody feeling very frustrated by Brexit?
Well, yeah, it's going down. Yeah, it's going down the pan, isn't it?
Malcolm, I think it's a great question. Here's what I would do. You guys have the talent. You had two major figures resign. I mean, David Davis, and today I would recommend everybody in the Times of London read the Sunday Times, read David Davis's editorial, op-ed about what he did, and go to the Telegraph and look at the secret deal they were trying to cut behind people's backs. What I would do is listen, with virtually no money, you voted your independence in June of 2016, and you caught the world by surprise. Let me tell you how much you caught them by surprise. We moved our radio show, Sirius XM, over here for a week. The night of the victory, CNN, the great CNN, they were in shock that you guys won. They actually were bringing people on, and the guys would call it Nigel Farage. They didn't know because the elites in the United States had never paid any attention to this. It was so impossible. You voted your independence. You now have, when I look at the team that opposes where this thing is going in Brexit, and I look at Davis, and I look at Boris Johnson, I look at Rees Mogg, I look at the two young people that quit the other day, I look at Nigel Farage. You've got the talent, okay? If I was in Middle England and said, this is not what I voted for, I would rise up. I'd make sure the guys in Parliament knew it. I'd write letters. I'd get on radio shows. I'd get on the internet. I'd get on Facebook and said, this is not what we voted for. We voted for our independence. We did not vote. We did not vote for the corporatists in the City of London, the international banks in the City of London, the big corporations in the City of London to really just slow walk us until we give up. We're not going to give up. Our energy's more, and I would light Theresa May up and said, that white paper does not stand. By the way, they call her out to Mar. She sits there and says, we can still cut a deal with the United States. He picks up the document, goes to page 106 and goes, hey, on page 106, you say that you can't cut a deal.
And this is the same every time. She stands up and says, when they've wound her up at the back, we're going to take back control of our bores, Lord. And all of it, it's all going to be great. And then the details.
Malcolm, you're a fighter. What I say to the people in Middle England, this fight's a long... Listen, let me say one more thing about winning elections. They're not going to pat you on the head and give you your country back. You're going to have to fight to take your country back every day, whether that's in Italy, whether it's in France, whether it's in England, whether it's in the United States. This is a daily fight. If you're in, like people in the United States and I'm in, we're going to win this thing. If we quit, and that's what they hope we do, they hope we go on and just get tired of it. If you quit, they're going to be in control.
Sounds like a call to arms.
Absolutely.
Steve, do you see everything in politics in terms of this great sort of military-style battle?
It is. It's war. This is what did Clausewitz say? War is politics by other means. Well, politics is war by other means. This is a war. This is a war for control. This is a war for the little guy. They fight. Look at what Soros and these NGOs do with the thing. They destroy you. I was a guy that served in the military. I got a daughter that went to West Point and as a paratrooper fought with the 101st Airborne in Iraq. Right? They literally came in and tried to destroy me personally. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. So they can come at me. But my point is, they're playing hardball. The problem is the conservatives and people in the United States and England have been too nice. It's time to and that's what I love about Trump. Trump is in your grill from the beginning, and he's not going to back off. And that's why you can't. If you're going to back off, they're going to win. If you've got the same grit, okay, you got the same grit we saw in the trenches in the Western Front. You got the same grit that was at Normandy and won World War II, if you got the same grit that was in North Africa, if you got the same grit that was in the Pacific, we're going to win this thing. They cannot beat you. If you give up, they will beat us.
That's not incitement to war. It's incitement to civil war. You're talking about the break. You're talking about Middle England and a divide between those who protested in Trafalgar Square.
Look at the thing in Trafalgar Square, and I say that's positive. I don't say those people shouldn't do it. It's positive, but we're not. But I say this in the United States. Somebody says you're so divisive. I said I'm not divisive. The division's there. There's certain times in history you just can't hug it out. These countries are going to go in one direction or the other. If you look at the great inflection points in American and British history, okay, the countries go in certain direction. We're at that inflection point. I happen to call it a fourth turning. Is this theory about generational politics? I think we're in a fourth turning. It's going to go one way or the other. We are. If you look at in Trafalgar Square the other day, and those people had full rights to do it and full rights to put those signs up, and they had even a full right to put the baby balloon up, which I didn't agree with, but they had the rights to do it. However, you're not going to hug it out, and I don't want to hug it out. I want our side to win, and we can win if we're just as dedicated and tough and relentless as they are.
I tell you what, and the one issue we haven't touched on yet, and perhaps if you, one of the callers, does, tomorrow, Donald Trump is off to meet Putin, and that against the backdrop of the Mueller investigation, of all sorts of accusations being made about Russian collusion. If you want to call 0345 6060 973 and ask those tough questions about Russia, do so. If you don't, I will. For now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:30. You're asking Steve Bannon your questions, but also on lbc.co.uk, you can, of course, put written questions too. And Phil sends this one, and he says, Steve Bannon, why do you hang around with a man that is a racist, has no respect for women, locks kids in cages to punish their parents, and is a compulsive liar? I think he's talking about Donald Trump, possibly.
But let's go to the thing on the southern border. I mean, the human traffickers, Phil, have destroyed so many people. It's bigger than drug trafficking right now. The whole purpose of zero tolerance and no catch and release is to make sure that we have a legal process. If you come through a port of entry, you get to try to claim asylum, okay, and you'll be able to stay together. If you're illegally crossing the border, Trump has gone back and now, like U.S. law is criminalized that event. And I think it's the only way we can start to get control of the southern border. Donald Trump does not do that to break up families. What Donald Trump is trying to do is keep families intact and not have them come up from Central America. The left has empowered, and the mainstream media has empowered, the human traffickers. It's a massive problem.
Is it possible, Steve, that one of the reasons, and by the way, we separate kids from parents in this country, but is it possible that in a way that was done as a disincentive for people to come?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what, people are saying was about a deterrence. I think it was just letting people know, and they got the word. If you look at the interviews that people have done down in Central America, they realized the game had changed up here. You have to do it. Remember this whole thing about economic asylum. If you're going to come for economic asylum, there's no asylum just for economics. What you have to do is then get in line and try to come in legally. And we take over, I think, 1.5 million people a year legally. You just have to get into the system. Okay. So Donald Trump is trying. This is what I'm saying. The elites of both political parties are about managing a process to unacceptable outcomes to citizens, whether that's Korea, whether it's China, whether it's NATO, Iran, or the southern border. Donald Trump is sitting there going, I could take the easy way out. I could give happy talk like Bush. I could give happy talk like Clinton. I could give happy talk like Obama and just go through my presidency and be popular and get out of here. Donald Trump, at 71 years old and worth $7 billion, didn't have to do this. He did it because he's a patriot. okay? And he's there to say, I'm going to have an impact, and I don't care what they call me. I don't care what they say about me, okay? Because right now, I have to take action. So, no, Phil, I will tell you, he's not a racist, he's not a misogynist, he's not a liar, and he's not somebody there looking to destroy families. It's the exact opposite. But thanks for the question.
Your critics would say, how is it patriotic to separate an 8-month-old baby from their mother? How is that patriotic?
By the way, because here's the thing. You have to have the rule of law. If you want to keep you come through a port of entry.
But you have to have decency.
You come through the port of entry. You come through a port of entry. And in a port of entry, you can try to claim asylum. If you don't get it, you get sent back. If you get it, you stay together. If you illegally cross the border, it's just like a criminal in the United States. If you have an 8-month-old baby and commit a crime in the United States, they don't let you stay together in jail.
Well, I'll tell you what
it's called the rule of law. By the way, it's a tough call, but it had to be made. And I think the deplorables in the United States, if you notice, the reason they're not talking about it right now, they understand that issue plays into this November. It's going to be a major issue in Trump's massive reelect victory here.
People vote for Donald Trump because he separates children from their parents.
No, it's not. It's not that. You're using the nomenclature.
I'm putting
left.
it to you.
You're using the nomenclature left. What he's doing is enforcing the law. If you break the law, okay, you're going to be separated. Now he's even kind of modified that. Look, I'm much more hardcore in this. It's got to be no catch and release, zero tolerance. If you come across the border, not in a port of entry, it's an illegal entry. You've got to be separated, and it's a distance of. You're saying don't do this, and for the human traffickers, it's not going to work because the message is going to get back.
Let's move on. Your stance very clear. Neil is calling from Watford. Good morning, Neil.
Right, and a direct question. Yes, Steve Bannon has created a lot of racism in America due to his discourse, the way they're doing. Minorities routinely get barracked into leave my country. How can you answer that?
Well,
it would create a lot of racism.
Basically, what Neil from Watford is saying is that you have created, through your narrative, racism. You've caused racism to be there. Is Neil's criticism.
Neil, I think you got to point some facts. I don't think you could be farther from the truth. In fact, I think if you look at not just racism, but even in the situation with our Muslim community, Donald Trump went to Riyadh and had the summit with 47 Muslim countries to talk about collectively for the first time and have a partners discussion, just like he had NATO, of what you got to do with the three biggest problems. Number one, radical Islamic terrorism. It's exporting to the Western Europe and the United States, and also the blowback they've had in Muslim countries. Number two, what Muslim nations going to do collectively, where we can help, about the moderation of Islam. Number three is this kind of beginning alliance against the expansion of Iran and Persia. Okay? No president in our history has ever engaged with the Muslim community like Donald Trump has, or put as much political capital into Donald Trump. And I should note, there hasn't been an attack since Donald Trump's come in. Donald Trump is got a no-tolerance policy on radical Islamic jihad, and I think it's starting to pay off. And so I would also say, Neil, black unemployment, all-time low. Wages for black working class, rising. Hispanic unemployment, all-time low. Wages for Hispanic and middle class starting to rise. His policies are the most inclusive policies because it gives black, Hispanic, Asian, white working class, and middle class a shot of the piece of the action.
But Neil, are you convinced by that?
No, you don't answer my question.
Go on.
I didn't ask you whether Donald Trump went to Saudi Arabia or black people who got raises in salaries. The issue is that his narrative, where I've seen videos of minorities getting barracked saying, get out of my country. That is the narrative. Not about Donald Trump going to Saudi Arabia. That's irrelevant. I asked him a direct question.
So basically, you're saying that it's the narrative, all right? So there's
narrative. Nothing about Donald Trump's trip to Saudi Arabia. What does that got to do with relations with America?
I'm confused, Neil. The narrative in what regard? What do you mean?
Regarding is that the narrative is all this thing about Mexican rapists. The constant barracking of minorities has created.
Okay, so the Trump speech, where he talks about drug dealers, rapists.
Well, what he is saying, but look at this. What he is saying is that these drug cartels are evil people, and what they're doing to people is wrong.
But what I'm saying is, but he has put larger population at risk. The minorities who have been there for years have now been barracked.
What do you mean?
Have been abused.
Neil, but this is what I'm saying. Look at the first time in many decades that they're finally getting economic breaks.
That's fine.
What do you mean that's fine? That's not fine. Neil, that's not...
Underlying racism, that nationalism is affecting a lot of money, and you don't see that.
Neil, I couldn't disagree with you more. I think if you look at the polling right now, 1.6 million blacks who voted for Barack Obama did not vote for Hillary Clinton. Okay, they were not prepared to pull the trigger for Donald Trump, but they did not vote for Hillary Clinton. You're seeing now, and I think it's among black males, I think it's 15 or 17%. You're seeing the polling numbers for Donald Trump among Hispanic working class and black working class starting to rise. So, Neil, you're just dead wrong. I understand you're emotionally tied to this.
But Neil is saying that nationalism of itself could lead to racism.
Absolutely not true. Nationalism does not care about your ethnicity, does not care about your race, does not care about your religion. What nationalism means in the United States is that you're a citizen of the United States of America. And if you're a citizen, you're going to get a better deal. Okay? By the way, we're not saying, hey, everybody that comes here, everybody that wants to come here can come to the United States. It just can't be like that. We have to limit mass illegal immigration to protect our workers.
Well,
we have to limit legal immigration to protect our workers.
Let's keep that theme going. Neil, thank you. Sean on the website asks, does Steve believe that all Islam is bad? And does he align himself with the Tommy Robinson movement?
Well, no, first off, Tommy Robinson, I don't think Tommy Robinson says all Islam is bad. Okay, I don't believe all Islam is bad. I think Islam is one of the great religions. I think there's aspects of Islam that work very well. Clearly, this radical Islamic jihad, what Trump addressed in Riyadh, and I think what the administration has done a tremendous job.
Because people think, Steve, people assume that you're against the entire Islamic religion.
Well, by the way, how could that? If you look at what I've done, I've spent more time in the Persian Gulf working with countries than just about anybody in the United States. If you ask Saudi Arabia, if you ask UAE, if you ask Egypt, who's one of the guys that are trying to work to bring about good results in that region for those countries, they'll say, hey, Bannon's in the top 3 or 5 guys. Okay, so I've gone out of my way. It is a huge effort of my line of work, okay, to make sure that Islam in particular becomes an ally of ours, ultimately the Sunni Arab nations around the Gulf, and eventually, I think, hopefully, ally with Israel in the West. So I couldn't be, there's not one comment I've ever said about Islam overall.
Okay.
By the way, I am adamantly against radical Islamic jihad or fascism. That has got to be stopped. And I think Donald Trump's done a tremendous job of stopping its export into Western Europe, in the United Kingdom, and stopping its export into the United States. And by the way, I am proud of my work in backing up sites and at Breitbart and at others over the last 10 or 15 years since 9/11, making the films I've made and going out and giving the speeches to stop radical Islamic jihad. And by the way, that is not racist and it's not anti-Islam. The guys will tell you we need it the most in that situation in Riyadh at that summit. It is the Arab leaders. It's the Muslim leaders that are saying, yes, we have a massive problem with radical Islamic jihad, with this jihad movement. You have to help us stop it.
Taking your calls to Steve Bannon. This is the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. The time is now 11:46. Steve Bannon is here taking your calls, and there'll be continued reaction and analysis on LBC from midday with Majid Nawaz. A question was asked there about Tommy Robinson. How do you feel about his case, Steve?
Well, the case is, to me, that Tommy Robinson ought to be released. I think it's outrageous of what happened and put him in jail like that and following this grooming thing. Look, I don't agree with everything Tommy has to say, but to me, he's a solid guy. He and I diverge on some of our ideas about Islam, but because I think it's still one of the great religions of the world. I think it's been hijacked by radicals, particularly young radicals.
He did break the law, though, didn't he?
By the way, in a technical interpretation of it, but what they did to him is outrageous, and I think Tommy Robinson should be released from prison. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think they're trying to suppress free speech. All he's trying to do is cover this and cover it in a fair way.
Well, our legal laws don't allow it.
No. I mean, the biggest criticism I've got of Tommy Robinson is that at last the authorities are actually getting these people in trial. We are convicting them in large numbers, and if his own attempt to get publicity could have put in jeopardy that trial, that was a mistake.
Well, that was a mistake, but I don't think that's the case. Okay, and I do think that there has been. If you look, I know this from running Breitbart London. Okay, it was our coverage of a lot of these topics that brought it to the forefront because the mainstream media in Great Britain was suppressing the information. Okay, that's just a fact. And so I empathize with guys like Tommy Robinson. Hey, this information has to be out there. You know, England's a free country. It believes in free speech. Okay, and so I should be out there doing it. Now, everything that Tommy and the lads do, I don't agree with all of it. But look, I don't agree with everything that a lot of people do, and they don't agree with all my stuff. But I got to tell you, Tommy Robinson is a good man, and having him in prison is. Here's why they got Tommy Robinson in prison. They're trying to shut up everybody in your audience. They're trying to let the little guy know if you get out of line, we're going to put you in jail.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Hamid in Kingsbury, who describes himself as a liberal Muslim. Hamid, hello.
Yes, hi. Hi, Nigel.
I'm very well. Steve Bannon's sitting here. He's waiting for your question, Hamid.
Yes, I'm really grateful to LBC to make that possible to speak to Steve, because we tried to get hold of Steve for the past 2 years because we've been putting him under the microscope as a Muslim organization called liberalmuslim.org. I mean, him with the President Trump, a lot of Muslims think differently, of course. They differ with us. They think they are racist, they are anti-Muslims. By far. They are helping us to retrieve the real Islam, the true Islam, the liberal Islam. And our main enemy, the human enemy, is not only radical Islam, but fundamental Islam, I call it. So we are fighting that by thought, of course, and we think the great help we get in from the President Trump to win his presidency. But as I said, we've been trying to get through to Steve for the past 2 years. We failed.
Well, Hamid, I've got a lot of people who want to speak to Mr. Bannon. I'm very interested in what you have to say. But do you have a direct question for Steve?
Yes, my direct question to him. So you are fighting fundamental Islam, which we understand. We are in the same boat. So what have you done for the new organization, like our organization? I mean, to open channels, to open like a media dialogue, because you are the media giant, not us.
By the way, I would love to get Hamid's. I'd love to get Hamid's information from your producer afterwards.
Yeah, Hamid, we will do that. Hamid, you have my promise that I'm going to give your phone number to Bannon's team after the show.
Hamid is one of the heroes on the world stage today. Here's what I mean: the men and women that are working this problem about radical Islam, and he calls it fundamental Islam, but I'll let people that are Muslims define that. They are true heroes. It's like conservative blacks in the United States. These people are singled out and they are attacked relentlessly by the elites and by the cultural Marxist left. You're hearing a real hero when you hear Hamid, and trust me, their lives every day is hell. Okay, and one of the things that we're there to support is to support, black conservatives in the United States and in moderate Islam. And so, Hamid, I'd love to get your information and hopefully meet with you guys when I'm over here. But we'd love to figure out how to work together.
How's that, Hamid?
That's an honor. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Let's go to Peter in Wimbledon, who is going to ask questions about Putin and Russia. Peter, good morning.
Hi, very good morning, guys. Thanks for taking the call. I only wish, Steve, you had the guts to be interviewed by someone who is not on your side of political argument, because there's so many holes in what you just said.
Peter, hey, brother. Peter, hang on for a second. Hey, Peter, hang on. Take a deep breath.
I'll get to my point.
No, hang on. I've given our interviews in the last 3 weeks at CNN, at Channel 4 with Nick Fry, with Piers Morgan. Every day I go and get interviewed by guys that do not believe any brother. Bring heat, but don't make up stuff.
Well,
okay, now, Peter,
stop the preamble and cut to the chase. Ask your tough question. You're such a tough guy. Give me a tough question.
Well, I'll give you a tough question. Is why, in your opinion, President of the United States chooses not to believe his secret services and believes the person who is the president of the enemy of the United States in a Western country?
Peter, is that the best? Peter, you got on this show, and that's the toughest question you're going to ask me? That's the toughest question. I want you to think, is that the toughest question you're going to ask me?
Well, because Mr. Trump keeps saying that I believe Mr. Putin. I believe when he says he didn't do it, he means he didn't do it.
He's not.
While all agencies and all indictments in the United States, which are happening now as we speak.
By the way, Peter,
meddle in U.S. elections, and Mr. Trump will be
Peter, we haven't seen one aspect of anything that actually meddled in the election. You've seen some stuff at the DNC and some marginalia about emails. That's what you've seen. Clapper, who is at the head of DNI, who said, oh, the Russians stole the election. In his book, brother, if you read it, about a fact, he said the whole thing came down to $100,000 worth of Facebook ads. Okay? That did not shift. And by the way, a third of those were spent after the election. Donald Trump went to Warsaw last August, Peter, and in Warsaw, in the square, said the number one priority of my administration is the defense of Western civilization. And number two, the way we're going to lose this is you guys doing natural gas deals with Russia. Okay, with Russia. That was the most provocative thing any U.S. president has ever said. The other day at NATO, he sits there with the Germans and said, I have a $700 billion defense bill. A huge hunk of that is defense against Russia. And you, Germany, don't pull your weight. You're all happy talk. You cut the whole tab, and then you have the audacity to cut a natural gas deal that turns over 70% of your energy to Russia, our enemy. So, Peter, and he said, blow that deal up and we'll supply you the natural gas. So please tell me where he's sitting there saying Putin's a good guy and we shouldn't confront Russia. He's confronting Russia's entire economy is driven by oil and gas, and Donald Trump's taking it on.
Peter, you've had an answer there. What do you think?
Well, Steve just came up with another 70%. It's just another lie. That Germany never have 70% of their energy resources coming from 60%. Russia.
Well, I tell you what, Peter, I know for certain that 60% of German energy comes from Russian gas. I do know that for an absolute fact. We've got little time. Peter, quick question from Theo.
Just quickly on Tommy Robinson. You said he wasn't Islamophobic. Every single Muslim watching this on 7/7, you got away with killing and maiming British citizens.
No. Actually, to be fair, you said you disagreed with Tommy Robinson on Islam.
Yeah. But before the break, you said he wasn't. Before the break, you said he wasn't Islamophobic.
Well, I said I don't know if
Islam is not a religion of peace. Islam is fascist and it's violent, and we've had enough.
I don't know if Islamic phobia about shipping guys out and stuff like that. I don't know if Tommy's like that. I mean, but he and I disagree about the religion of Islam. Okay, but I don't think Tommy's a bad guy. I think he's a solid guy, and I think he's got to be released from prison.
But he broke the law.
Well, when you break the law, you break. First of all, it's a highly technical. It was a highly technical. It was a highly.
You talked about citizens at the southern border and adhering to the law. Tommy Robinson, by what he filmed outside that courtroom, he broke the law.
Well, according to the interpretation of that judge, a lot of people will say that law is way too restrictive. By the way, just free speech is just free speech. It's interpretation of what they said they have outside.
We're going to move on. We got one more issue.
Are you a news guy? Are you? I suppose we even had a news guy. Are you a news guy? Are you?
I'm calling you out on something. You're saying on southern border.
Brother, you got to go. Hold it. Stop. You got to go a lot better. You got to go a lot.
I take the view as well that Tommy Robinson broke the law. I've always taken that view. One more topic. Very little time. Dan in Leicester. Quick question, please.
Morning, fellas. I wanted to ask for Steve's take on the slowly growing pile of evidence that Brexit was bought rather than won.
Right, Dan, thank you. Was Brexit bought, not won? And you're talking then, I presume, about Russian collusion, or you're talking about information, Cambridge Analytica. What in particular?
I'm talking, I guess, specifically about probably Robert Mercer's activities around Cambridge Analytica and AIQ.
This is another. Here's what you liberals have got to embrace. You lost. Okay, just like with Donald Trump, embrace your defeat and embrace why you got defeat. You're looking for, because Soros puts up so much money for your NGOs and is in bed with all your media. You think that the model on our side has got to be a Soros. Robert Mercer had zero to do with Brexit. Cambridge Analytica had zero to do with Brexit. Here's why you lost. The British people weighed and measured the issue and said, we want our independence. And you guys continue to look up some sort of conspiracy. You know, the left are bigger wingnuts than the conspiracy guys on the right. Okay? They're just bigger wingnuts. And I include you in that. Robert Mercer had zero. There's not one fact out there that Cambridge Analytica had anything to do with this or Robert Mercer had anything to do with this.
Okay.
What's the evidence on Soros?
Do what?
What's the evidence on Soros?
The NGO, you don't know he's opened borders and what he does over in Hungary and what he's done in continental Europe? You're sitting there. What evidence and source is that a legitimate question? Is that a
legitimate question? You've denied Mercer and then you put Soros in.
Soros is open. He put $18 billion into Hope Not Hate. He's put the $18 billion. He divided into what 7 or 8 not for profits. You didn't know that.
Well, he is heavily funding the campaign for a second referendum. Of that, there's no doubt.
Big time. You didn't know that.
But what's wrong with that?
Well, all I'm saying is you guys have to have, because you got guys like Soros that's doing that. You think you have to have a guy on the right that's doing it like Robert Mercer. You don't. What you have on the right is little guys standing up.
Okay, guys, we've run out of time. Steve, thanks ever so much for coming in, and thank you to all of you for engaging this morning. It's been fascinating, a unique opportunity, and I know that Majid Nawaz will continue this after the break. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show. I'll be back tomorrow night at 7. At 3 this afternoon, it's Ian Payne. But up next, it is Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel.